Hello, welcome to Shelf Defiance. We are continuing on with our reading of Carlo Cafiero's Summary of Capital. This is brought to us by the amazing people at Marxist.org. I did put a link in the description if you'd like to search their site for anything extra that might interest you. Marxists.org. I don't feel like I said that right the first time. I'm, of course, your disembodied narrator. Reading this for the first time, I am curious how Cafiero is going to break this down. Like I said, I've tried to read Marx before and it feels pretty daunting. And then tonight we're just going to be reading the original introduction, which is the modern take. This was the 2008 Why this is still relevant, and then we'll be reading Cafiero's original preface from Italy in 1878. So, the original introduction to the Italian online publication Marxist Internet Archive 2008. Carlo Cafiero accomplished an important work in drafting the summary of Capital, approved and looked over by experts and even by Marx himself. Not only because it is also, let me start that over. Not only because it is able to synthesize the thinking of the master in a few pages, but also because it is able to convey Capital's message in an impassioned yet concise manner, in a tenacious and complete, as well as illuminating writing. It is not that this writing is sufficient to ascertain all of the contents of that immense work and milestone that is Marx's Capital, but it certainly has the value and capacity to better acquaint the reader with the universe of Marxist works, Capital included. This is no small task in an age like ours, in which Marxism unfortunately enjoys a lack of fame, due to the rule of bourgeoisie capital and to so many preconceptions and false myths surrounding communism. One cannot blame communist groups and parties for this crisis, but above all, one can blame the historical and social doings that have characterized the last 20 years, with the explosion of technology that has favored globalization and therefore a further reinforcement of the bourgeoisie, which controls politics and media. It is exactly in this context that, around 2 centuries later, the work that we have in front of us gains tremendous truth, more than many contemporary sociological writings. And then, just as a reminder, that was 2008. It's even more relevant now, in my humble estimation. Okay, now we're going to read the original preface. Italy, March 1878. A profound feeling of sadness struck me, studying Capital, when I thought that this work was, and who knows how much longer it would remain, entirely unknown in Italy. But if that is, I then said to myself, I want to say that my duty is to work for all people, so that this would no longer be. And what to do? A translation? Phew, that wouldn't help at all. The people who can understand the work of Marx, such that he has written, certainly know French, and can make use of J. Roy's beautiful translation, fully reviewed by the author, who says it even deserves to be consulted by those who speak the German language. It's a very different group of people for whom I must work. It's divided into three categories. The first is composed of workers gifted with intelligence and of a certain education. The second, composed of young people who came out of the bourgeoisie and have embraced the cause of labor, but who for now don't have the set of studies or the sufficient intellectual development to understand capital in its original text. The third, finally, composed of the youngest in schools, still pure of heart, who I can compare to a beautiful nursery of still tender plants, but who will bear the best fruits if transplanted into fertile soil. My work must therefore be an easy and brief summary of Marx's book. This book represents the new true, which completely demolishes, crushes, and disperses to the winds a secular edifice of mistakes and lies. It is all a war, a glorious war, and by the power of the enemy, and by the even greater power of the captain, who undertook it with great quantities of the newest weapons, tools, and machinery of every sort, which has genius, which his genius had known how to portray from all the modern sciences. My work is a great length shorter and more modest. I must only guide a crowd of willing followers along the shortest and simplest path to the temple of capital, and to tear down that God there, so that all can see with their own eyes and touch with their own hands the elements of which it is composed, and to rip off the vestments from the priests, so that all can see the hidden stains of human blood and the cruelest weapons with which they go about every day, sacrificing an ever growing number of victims. And with these intentions, I prepare to work. Meanwhile, Marx can fulfill his promise, giving us the second volume of Capital, which will deal with the process of circulation of capital, Book 2, and the process of capitalist production as a whole, Book 3, and the fourth and final volume, which will explain a history of economic theories. This first book of Capital, originally written in German and afterwards translated into Russian and into French, is now briefly summarized in Italian in the interests of the cause of labor. May the workers read it and think about it carefully, because in it is contained not only the story of the development of capitalist production, but also the martyrdom of the worker. And finally, I will also appeal to a class highly interested in the fact of capitalist accumulation, i.e., to the class of small property holders. How is it that this class, once so widespread in Italy, shrinks more and more every day? The reason is very simple. Because since 1860, if I can get my teeth around that, Italy has set course with more alacrity down the path which all modern nations must necessarily travel, the path that leads to capitalist accumulation, which has reached that classic form in England, which Italy wishes to reach along with all other modern nations. May the small property holders meditating on these pages about the history of England reported in this book, meditating on capitalist accumulation, increased in Italy by the usurpation of big property holders and by the liquidation of ecclesiastical, that doesn't sound right when I'm saying it, but it looks right, ecclesiastical, there we go, and state property, shake off the torpor that oppresses their minds and hearts, and once and for all persuade themselves that their cause is the cause of the workers, because they will all inevitably be reduced by modern capitalist accumulation to this sad condition, either sell themselves to the government for a loaf of bread or disappear forever within the dense roads of the proletariat. Okay, that is an amazing preface, and I'm really excited to see how he breaks all of this down. Okay, so next time we will start with part one. Until then, thank you for joining me and bearing with me as I get my teeth around correct pronunciations. See you next time.